I want to welcome Kapil. Everybody, well, I will introduce him when others are around. That Kapil is the new IIT Development Foundation CEO, IIT Kanpur Development Foundation CEO.
So let me actually give a bit of background of this. So for those who are not, hello, can you hear me?
Morning, everybody.
Yeah, this is Ronnie Roy.
Hey Ronnie, how are you? Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Hi Ronnie.
Thank you for inviting. Hi Jan.
Hi.
So Isha, I was saying that this ITK Development Foundation, something which we have been toying on this idea to create for last 2 years, and we started working on the theme and the concept sometime early last year, and sometime in June we proposed to the board, and eventually we got this Section 8 started, and last 7 to 8 months, Kapil has been working as a consultant, and he has taken the CEO as full-time CEO of this organization from February 1st. The objective of ITK Development Foundation is basically to be the main organization for fundraising and managing the alumni relations, which essentially my office was not able to completely do it in a professional manner. And with this, what we are going to do is we're going to take up the all the activities much higher up in the hopefully in next 1 year you will see the impact significantly.
Good. I think that would be very useful.
Kapil, you are there?
Yes, I'm very much here. Very much here.
And where is this organization headquartered? In India or here in US?
So it's going to be in Kanpur. And to start with, we are going to partner with ITK Foundation in US. And this is an early stage to see whether we are going to have an office directly in US or elsewhere. But as we shape up and as we understand, how to take all the alumni and many of them on board for all various different activities, we'll see, whether there's a need to add more offices, perhaps. But at this point, it will be operational from campus.
Okay.
Good. We'll give everybody maybe a few more minutes to walk on in, and then we will sort of get started. And
so Ronnie, would you like to show some share your screen also in your presentation?
Yes, I would. So I'll tell you when to start sharing.
So
and
actually,
then
I think I have given the permission to anybody can share screen, so you should be able to share screen without any problems.
Okay, I'll thank you for that. I have a screen ready. I'll share it as soon as I'm ready with that screen.
yeah, okay. Where are you, Ronnie? What are all those monitors behind you?
I'm at work in office in Singapore.
Okay.
It's a trading day. I run a hedge fund, so my day job is to sit and trade and make money for investors. That's the objective. So I can then fund some of these initiatives, and hopefully Jayant will be happy because I have some direct slides as to how one should give to IIT Kanpur and IIT Kanpur Foundation. And so
I think for others who are not aware, Ronnie has been one of the greatest benefactor, and he has been giving back, and he is actually inspirational for many others. And it will be very evident once he completes his talk. Thank you, Ronnie.
I have some numbers and math and finance behind it also as to how much one should give to IIT Kanpur. And it's my personal logic, and but that's how I come to some numbers.
Yep, we need people like that. I'm hoping we will have a few more people show up.
So Ish, what is the mix of people between US and rest of the world?
Well, I mean,
or India?
here it's most of the participants are from the US, but there are a fair amount from India. Brijendra is from India, and I think Dilip is in India. Surojit is in India. So we and you know, maybe a couple more will show up who are in India. Our West Coast people have not showed up yet. Where are they? I mean, you know, they usually are here, but they have not showed up yet.
They're still having drinks.
Yeah.
Drinks or dinner.
Atam, Ish, Atam is here, but his camera is not off.
Yeah, and we have. Yeah, we are getting there.
See, 18
We have people
participants.
here today. Deepak, thank you for coming.
Oh, absolutely, Ish. Happy to be here. A pleasure. Looking forward to the discussion.
I heard from Raj Khanna. He said he will be a little late, but he will be here. So how long have you been in Singapore, Ronnie?
So I moved here in 2011 to set up this company.
Oh, you moved
before.
to set up the company. Okay.
Yeah, I used to be based in Hong Kong. Before that, Tokyo, a little bit before that. So I left India. I worked in India for 4 years after IIT and then IIM. And then in '96, I moved out to Hong Kong, then Tokyo, then New York, back to Hong Kong, and then finally last 9 years in Singapore.
So what kind of fund do you run?
So I run an asset management company that basically runs a hedge fund strategy, but in macro markets, which is interest rate, foreign exchange, and fixed income markets. I don't do anything in equities. I don't understand it. So I have never traded it. So the objective of the fund is to try and make, some return with the benchmark being US interest rates and try and beat that and generate absolute returns in any kind of markets, so up or down.
Well, beating interest rates over here these days will not take much doing.
It's difficult to have
here interest rates are zero, so if you get any interest, you probably.
Right. So our fund has over 9 years generated 8% in dollars compounded. So
that is excellent.
So that's somewhere between 600 and 700 basis points of difference with US interest rates over an average of the last 9 years.
What kind of Sharpe ratio? What kind of volatility?
Sharpe has been 1.7. So 8% returns with roughly 4.5 vol. So it's done quite well. So the assets we started with 10 million is now 1.7 billion.
Good for you. Well, listen, 8% steady is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to make anything more than 4 or 5% given where US interest rates are in fixed income markets. So yeah, we are happy, but so we also have 1, 2, pre-IIT Kanpur alumni in this office. So there was another of my batchmate previously. He's left, but apart from me, there is one from 2015 batch and one from 2019 batch.
Great. That is fantastic.
You know, we can go ahead and get our show on the road a little bit, and you know, and wait till more people will come. I want to welcome everyone to the February Zoom meet of the IIT Kanpur 65 to 70 batch. We do this on a monthly basis, and we try to have different topics for discussion. I just wanted to acknowledge some special people who are here today, who are participating. We obviously have Ronnie Roy, who's the speaker today, and then we also have Laurie O'Keefe. She will be the speaker next month, and she, you know, wanted to sit in and see what we are and what Ronnie has to say. She's the president and CEO of Triangle Community Foundation, and I will tell a little bit about what she will say. And then we have our Dean of Resource, Jayant Singh, and then we also have Kapil Kaul, who is now going to be the IIT, the CEO of the IITK Development Foundation. Today, we begin a series of presentations on philanthropy and giving. The speaker today is Ranodeb Roy. We call him Ronnie Roy. He's the founder, CEO of RV Capital Management in Singapore. He is an IITK alumni, and in his talk, he will talk about what we should do next. He will go into the philosophy of giving, why, how much, etc. The March presentation will be by Laurie O'Keefe, President, CEO, Triangle Community Foundation. She will speak on the joy of giving, the giving joy, ideas to incorporate philanthropy into your financial, family, and legacy planning. And I don't know if she's planning on doing that. She might speak a little bit on the perspective of different types of vehicles, how to find organizations that match your philanthropic interests and stuff like that. So that's what our series is going to be. And, you know, one of the things is that as a group, you know, we have all had successful careers and we have achieved financial success. And yes, we worked hard and we made good use of the opportunities that were given to us. However, whether we appreciate it or not, our community, society, and system contributed a lot to our success. We climbed the ladder over the wall. Yes, we did it, but there were a lot of people that built that ladder and held the ladder while you climbed over the wall and who cheered you as you climbed. And it is an accident of birth that we were born on the right side of the tracks. And, you know, just to kind of mix things up a little bit, you know, the Bible says, for unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required, and to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. So basically, it is our turn to give back to the society and the world. And our first presentation today, and our series of the name of our series is, it is your turn to give. The world and society contributed to your success. Pay them back with interest. Our first speaker is Ronnie Roy. The title of his speech is, What Should One Do Next? At 32, Ronnie realized that the world is beset with extreme inequality, with India at the wrong end of it. World-class Indian education of government-subsidized prices had given him and others a leg up, and that quirk of destiny should be shared. Ronnie is the founder and CEO of RV Capital Management Private Limited, an asset management company in Singapore. He has a long slew of, of accolades. He has been on the Bandhan Financial Holdings, Morgan Stanley in Hong Kong, and he was one of the youngest managing director of Merrill Lynch without a G7 education. Ronnie received his MBA from the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad.
Speaker of the Ronnie Roy is based in Singapore.
Can you hear? Yeah, and he received his Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Kanpur in 1990. He also won distinguished awards, including being the gold medalist ranked All India first in the 1986 Indian School Certificate exam, and also a gold medalist in the 1984 ISCE exam from La Martiniere College in Kolkata. I can say I share one thing with him. He and I were born in the same city. But so I will now ask Ronnie to come on and speak about, tell us about, share his thoughts. And he is an engineer, so he's going to get into some spreadsheets and mathematics, and I guess you will all be able to follow him. And I wanted to say next one, March 10th presentation will be by Laurie O'Keefe, and then the April and May presentations, what we are going to do is bring charities and NGOs, particularly that have a connection with our group, like our children have started a lot of impressive NGOs, and Naveen's son. And it's really nice that our children have devoted their lives to NGOs, and there are charities here. Vijay Dixit has started a charity here, and then we will open it to all charities, and maybe every month we will have one charity give us a presentation during our monthly. So anyway, go ahead, Ronnie. You go ahead and take the stage and give us your talk.
Thank you, Ish. It's an honor and a privilege to talk to such an esteemed group of people. Obviously, I've trodden the same campus as you have, and I can see what I will probably be doing 20 years from now. I'm the 1990 batch, again, what I'm going to talk about is something, some of it might be quite obvious to some of you. So I obviously do not want to be disrespectful or pedantic in it. Some of it might be obvious, but I wanted to more importantly walk you through my thinking process, when and what I did, and give you some examples that I'm sure everybody is involved in something or the other, but I wanted to kind of share with you like what I've been involved with, so you can get some ideas, because I got my ideas from others as well. So giving is obviously a very personal thing, and almost everybody, especially with, so the reason why we are here in this group is we probably came from very modest backgrounds back home, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten into IIT. I strongly believe that getting into an extremely competitive school is a product of not having too much of privilege initially, right? And then creating your own destiny from it. So I'm going to start by sharing presentation, which I will refer to, but please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. So, like Ish mentioned, this is the title, Why Give, How Much to Give, and Whom to Give. Again, as Ish mentioned, not everything that we've achieved is on account of ourselves. A lot of it has been a product of what the society has, given to us. It's the family around us, the teachers who have taught us in, school, high school, in IIT and beyond, professors, postmen. I purposely put postmen in it because, when I was preparing for the IIT exams, I used to do this correspondence preparatory course, which in our times was brilliant tutorials. So the postman used to come with these thick packets. And as you know, in India, the postmen either come walking or in a cycle. And he used to come and give me this packets, which were reasonably heavy, which had study materials. And he used to ask me, and obviously I was then in class 11, 12, as to what these are. And I told him. So he said, my son is in class. So, I mean, a postman is probably close to the, bottom end of the pyramid in the economic spectrum in India. Instead, he says, my son is in class 7 or 8, and I don't know what he should do, but I know what he should not do. And the answer is he should not be doing what I'm doing, as in he shouldn't be a postman. So later on, when I went into IIT, I gave my entire brilliant tutorials packets, which was almost like 8 or 10 kgs worth of paper to him. And many years later, he met me and he told me his son went into Jalpaiguri Engineering College. He didn't get into IIT. He got into Regional Engineering College. And a few years later, he was a software programmer. And a few years later, he was abroad. So so the postman obviously played a very important part. The examiners, the mess workers, the railway ticket collectors who've, probably shown kindness when I was in an undeserved compartment going from Kanpur to Calcutta. So all these people have helped shape us. The question is, have we done enough for them? So one of the key points that we discuss in family and with my wife as well is how much to keep back. So we obviously are reasonably well off, all of us in this call. The question is, how much do we keep back for our kids, which is obviously a very important decision, and the most of us are always thinking we should keep back a lot for them, right? So there is a saying, I think it's part of the Gita, which it's in Hindi, and for those I'm going to read out and then translate. It says, Put kuput to kyudhan sanchay, and put suput to kyudhan sanchay. Basically saying that if your son or daughter are not the best of sons and daughters, and they are kuput, which in most cases it's not the case for us, then why do we want to keep the money for them? Because they're not good people. On the other hand, if our sons and daughters are really good people and we've brought them up really well, then why do we need to keep the money for them? Because they would have done well anyway. So in both cases, you don't really need to keep money for them. And that's the logic, and it's come to us from, obviously many years back in Hindu society. And then there's another saying about, how much to give. We tend to give very little of how much we have, but then that's not really giving. And this is Mother Teresa basically saying that it's not giving unless it hurts. it has to hurt you a little bit to give away. Only then is the giving meaningful compared to how much you have. So with those two kind of philosophies in mind, I'll start my story. And the story brings back to what IIT Kanpur did for us. And I prepared this spreadsheet for myself many years back, and this is an updated spreadsheet for your batch. And I took some of the numbers from Ish and others, and there might be small mistakes here and there. So the average cost of US education in the time when you guys graduated between 1965 and 1970 was roughly $2,500 per annum for full paying students. In India, it was, 1,000 rupees per annum, which is in those days, I believe it was US dollars was 4.5 rupees. So that's 222 US dollars. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is, here was a poor country, India, and I guess Nehru's vision created the IITs, was subsidizing students and giving a world-class education, i.e. almost comparable to what a similar kid was getting in the US at a ridiculously low price. So for the cost of those 5 years, if either a US parent or the US government was spending $12,500, we were getting it for $222. Now, many of you, and me included in the next generation, use that education. And so the input variable into us came at a very low price, but the output we got, i.e. income over the next course of the next 30, 40, 50 years has come in US dollars. So if we keep that money for ourselves, the poor country that has helped us has actually, we have robbed from that poor country and kept it for ourselves. So that's my logic. So how does one give that back? So if I compound that money into today's dollars, and I'm using an average compounding rate of 3% as the average inflation rate in US dollars for US dollar earners, and I'm compounding at 8% for rupee, then the amount in today's value is 56,000 US dollars and $693. So what I've done is I've compounded it in rupee and then divided by today's exchange rate to get that number. So this is a rough estimate as to the value of that education that the government of India and the mess workers and the underpaid postmen and the ticket collectors and our parents and our family around us have value added to us, and we need to give that back. So so we, as a starting point, I think each of us in your generation should try to immediately give back $56,000, because that's what we have taken from them. And this is just break even, right? So now I bring this forward to the next slide, because we just didn't learn the education for those 5 years. So I again found out some numbers, how much the cost of schooling was in India at that point of time. And many of us went to government schools, etc. The private schools too are quite cheap. So I've done 12 years of pre-undergrad education, which in the US are priced at $1,000. $2,500 for the undergrad education for 5 years, and $3,000 for the 2 years of postgrad education. That's the real total expense that have been put into us. and our peers at that point of time. And that number is in India terms, $576 and $30,000 for US. And again, using the same logic of 3% and 8% compounded, the number comes out to be $137,000 for US education and $1,800 for an Indian education. So again, $136,000, the difference between the two is what we need to give back to be really, truly break even to Indian society for the value of the education they've imparted on us. It looks high, but that's the reality. Moving on, something that Ish talked about, right? So a lot of IITians, and I'm not saying it's this group or any group, this is a Dilbert comic about what, making fun of IITians. So it says, since I became a project manager, no one has returned my calls or responded to my emails. Luckily, I'm an IIT graduate, mentally superior to most people on earth. So I finished the project myself. So the boss says, are you tired? He says, I'm trained only to sleep during national holidays. So that is an impression of what, the world thinks of IIT graduates, and sometimes IIT graduates think of themselves. But the reality is, it's not true, right? We just human beings like any others. And therefore, our wealth is not created because we are brilliant or anything like that. It's a product of what society has given to us. That quirk of destiny that I was talking about earlier. So coming back to the math as to how much do we have and therefore how much we should give, this is a rough estimate. I've taken 4 scenarios of net worths of people in your generation. An average net worth of $1 million, an average net worth of $3 million, $5 million, and $10 million. And essentially what I'm trying to say is most of you in your generation probably has housing paid for because you paid for your mortgage. Most of your kids are up and running, and you have, let's say, a net worth somewhere in these 4 scenarios. It could be more, it could be less, but in general I've bucketed it as just as an illustrative example. It's not meant to be personal on anybody. And again, I've used some estimates of what your household expenditures are. So the average household expenditure for somebody who's worth $1 million is probably $75,000. It could be a little less, it could be a little bit more. Similarly, I've taken the numbers for somebody who's worth $3 million. It's probably a bit more, $100,000 per annum. For 5 million, it's 150. For 10 million, it's 200,000. So let's take into account the fact that you want to take care of the next 10 years of expenses. Beyond that, you'll have enough left over. So let's say you multiply those yearly expenditures by 10, and you get the next row, which is somewhere between $750,000 of expenditure to $2 million of expenditure. So you're still left with, in scenario 1, $250,000, scenario 2, $2 million, scenario 3, $3.5 million, and scenario 4, $8 million. Let's say, even though what I said about kids and how much you should leave behind, you leave behind 50%, because I can assure you most of your kids don't need this money. But even if you want to keep something behind for them, and it's 50%, which is a large amount of leftover, you're still left over $125,000 in the first scenario and $4 million in the fourth scenario. If you want to give that away in 10 years' time, each year you should give at least $12,500 in the first scenario to $400,000 in the last scenario. Now, some of you probably do more, some of you probably do less. It's okay. As I said, it's a personal thing. But this is just a framework as to how one should think about it, or at least how I think about it. So let me start with what caused me to do this.
1 minute, Ronnie. Will everybody please mute yourself? There are some noises coming. Everybody please mute yourself. Go ahead, Ronnie.
So, like Ish said, I was 32 years old, and I was a trader in Wall Street, but I was based in Tokyo. And Tokyo was for those who've been there, is a very interesting city for young people. And there's a lot of glitzy parts of town. And if you're a trader in a Wall Street firm, and this was the year 2000, when I was 32 years old, there's a lot of way to spend money. And coincidentally, I was talking to my mother a few weeks before this incident happened, and she had just, my grandmom and granddad essentially came as refugees from, East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, and they lived in Calcutta in this colony called Netaji Nagar. And that, my grandmom had passed away, and it was a 3-story building, and the ground story came to my mom. And so my mom and dad lived in an apartment where I grew up, and said, like, we don't really have any use for it. And so my mom was saying that, like, can we use that ground floor to help young children around there who are, essentially roaming around the streets before they go to school. Nobody guides them. So if I can, my mom was a school teacher, a kindergarten school teacher. So she said, if we can do something for it, but the problem is it costs 15,000 rupees a month. And this is the year 2000, 2001. So I just heard it and I thought about it. A few weeks later, a few of us on the trading floor, guided by our leader, was about to go to a nightclub. And the nightclubs in Tokyo are quite, as some of you might know, are quite interesting, glitzy. And I said that, like what happens there? And like my boss was kind of laughing, and so a lot of things happen. I said, like, how much does one drop in a place on an evening? He said, oh, you can just go nuts and spend $500 one evening. And I just stopped there on tracks. I didn't go in with them. And I came back home. And I said, like, $500 for one evening. That's exactly 15,000 rupees that my mom was talking about. And so over the next few months, we set up the first family foundation called Utsargo Charity. Utsargo means in Bengali, like dedication to my grandmom. And it was easy to set up because there's family involved. And every day between 8 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., it catered to 30 kids who were essentially kids of construction workers, daily laborers, house helpers, who had all gone to work. So the kids didn't know what to do. So it's around that area. And so essentially, the kids came in at 8 o'clock, they got a meal, and they got taught their homework, because again, nobody normally guides them for their homework. And then around, 10:30, they were to go off to school. So that's what it did. And then in the afternoon, since there's real estate, I said, let's use it for, I like buying paintings. And I used to go to people's houses and see very expensive paintings, in crores, and they're Indian painters. But then Calcutta, as you know, is a big scene for art. And I used to find painters practically not being able to sell their paintings. So I created an art studio for them, for painters who were below a certain income category. And they used to come and paint, and I used to underwrite and buy their paintings every month. Right? So it helped them out. It helped decorate my drawing rooms and my friends' drawing rooms, etc. So I did this for 3-4 years, and I was happy but not satisfied. And the reason is I could help 30 kids and 3 painters. And the question is, the problem of our country is not in tens, but it's in thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. So my question was how to scale up. And I realized this family unit and the family thing is not scalable. So, you know, I started thinking in a different way and said, how does one scale? Because by then I started earning more and therefore I had more money to give. And I said, like, how does one scale this into a bigger size that could help many more? So as I was reading, you know, e-commerce was taking off. And this is a complicated slide, but I'll tell you where I learned this from. And I realized in e-commerce, there are 4 models of businesses. And not just in e-commerce, any kind of business. So customer to customer. So there's one small business that one customer sells to another customer. eBay is a good example of that. So a customer wants to sell his or her pen. He puts it up on eBay and another customer likes the secondhand pen and buys it. So that's a customer to customer business. There's a business to customer business of which that has really taken off, Amazon being one, Walmart being the other, where a business creates a way to sell to customers. And then there's a customer to business model where YouTube, for example, a customer creates a product, puts it up on YouTube, and businesses buy it by, you know, putting ads. And then there's the classic business to business where many of us have worked, where we work in large organizations that help other businesses. I thought in philanthropy, the C2C model, which is what I was trying, where I was giving, you know, help to one painter, or, you know, a family of 6 were helping 30 students, was not scalable. It's a customer to customer model. And I thought a better way is to kind of go into either a customer to business model or a business to business model, where money can be channelized to larger number of people. So that was the first learning that I had from learning of what was going on around me in businesses. And I thought I'm going to implement that into my giving. So this is a kind of a thing that Utsorgo Charity did, the family business. So here's a teacher helping kids in the morning. There's some paintings by painters. This is a hospital that we created in Taki. Taki is where my mom was born. It's a border town of now 40,000 people. When she was growing up, it was like, you know, 5,000 people. It's on the West Bengal, Bangladesh border. It's a school, it's a hospital that we put up. And so examples of paintings. So this was like step 1. But like I said, I was happy, but I was not satisfied by what I was doing. So, like I said, I realized that one needs to scale up because our country has 1.4 billion people. And how does one maximize our time and money to give to as many people as possible? So the things I realized was, instead of me trying to find people who need money, I need to find very passionate entrepreneurs. So Praveen Bhagwat, who's my batchmate, spoke to you, and I believe some of you've already started giving money to him, which is great. You need to find those kind of passionate people who find a cause and help not 1-2 individuals, but by thousands. And as you heard from his talk, Praveen is not just thinking of 40,000 trees, not just our batch, but IIT Kanpur, and then finally all IITs, and finally probably all colleges in India. That's the way he's a great social entrepreneur thinks. The second thing I realized is I need to personally engage not with the activity, but with the entrepreneur. So if I can, you know, help the entrepreneurs thinking in a big way, then it can help a lot of society. Then the third point The third point was, just trust the entrepreneur. If you found a good entrepreneur, just trust the person and give it to him, and then don't ask or intervene. Like if you buy a share of Google, you're not going to call up, the CEO and ask him like, why did you not do this? You trust the guy, right? So similarly, I'm a non interfering kind of this thing. So for example, like I think Jayant very kindly mentioned that I've given to IIT Kanpur, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Many times Jayant and his predecessor had asked me, so do you want to give it for a specific department or a specific cause or a specific kind of person, etc.? And my answer is no. I trust IIT Kanpur will do the right thing, because I'm not qualified enough to know. So for example, I've set up a chair, right? I said, I'm not qualified enough to know, and I've done this chair in perpetuity, which department in IIT, which professor will make the biggest impact to society. So it's IIT Kanpur's responsibility to find out who's the most talented person. And it could be in chemistry, it could be in computer science, it could be in, biomedical engineering, who knows? So the idea is, once you've decided on the social cause, do not interfere. And the last bit is, everybody can't do everything. So a lot of people ask me, so why don't you give up this Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and now RV Capital, and do it yourself? And I realized, you need that something within you to be able to give up everything, like what Praveen does and goes to, the Western Ghats and spends time there. Similarly, the other entrepreneurs that I'll talk about, they have it in them. I don't have it in them. I'm probably good at sitting and trading foreign exchange markets, and I think I should do that. And not everybody can do everything. And once you understand that, you can just, be, hands off from them. So I'm going to try and play a small video of, so Praveen, for our IIT K batch 25th reunion, made a 90-minute movie, a documentary, using a film producer to do it. And there are two clippings of it I want to play, and it kind of gives a little bit of flavor of what I was thinking. And this is from 6 years back, and nothing has changed in the way of thinking. So I'm going to just play a couple of clips that I had, and then I'll go back to the second part of my journey. The amount of disservice it does to our economy by a slum child dropping out at grade 4, we have absolutely no idea how much economic loss it is getting to our country. If we can somehow get them up to grade 10 or 12 or whatever, the compounded effect of our GDP will be a different scale altogether. So essentially, one of the things I realized, and after meeting one of the social entrepreneurs, a guy called Pankaj Jain, who founded a organization called Gyanshala. Gyanshala only specializes in one thing. It takes a dropout kid from a slum between class 1 and class 4 and educates them up to class 4 and gets them back mainstream into schooling and puts them back into school. So what I was trying to say in this clip was the amount of disservice that society does to the child by letting him drop out in class 1 to 4 is huge, because most likely these class 1 to class 4 child who's dropped out, not because of his own volition, not because he wants to drop out, not because he's dull, it's because the society's made him do it, because his parents are day laborers, he might have become an orphan, he doesn't have money, parents don't have money. So we need to put them back into school, because if we don't, the negative elements of society largely in the future for the society is going to come from those people. So we need to prevent that from happening. So what Gyanshala does is takes these kids and so Gyanshala runs a 15,000 kid operation in Ahmedabad. I created Gyanshala for Kolkata, which at its peak went up to 4,000. They pick up kids from slums, they're dropped out of school, they are put back into school in 4 years' time in normal schools. And that's a massive benefit to society. I also found that I was unfairly making more money than I needed in the business I was in, and that needed to be channelized, because the effect of that dollar back into India in education and other things can be huge multiplier effect. I started my first organization called Utsarg Charity in 2002. The first realization is these guys will never be able to use a computer because they can't afford it. So the idea was to take approximately 20-25 kids, and between 8 a.m. to 10:30 in the morning before they go to school, expose them to a before school tuition, and then over weekends impart computer education to them. I focus a lot on 3 or 4 of these efforts that are going on in and around Calcutta and West Bengal. One in the field of slum education, where I've set up a chapter of an Ahmedabad-based unit called Gyanshala in Calcutta, which only caters for dropouts, 0 to grade 4 level kids in slums. The other is in Taki, where I've adopted a program to eradicate the ultra-poor sector in that section of society using Bandhan, which is India's now largest microfinance organization, to help in eradicating poverty through employment generation. Yeah, so my first venture was to find 3 such organizations. One, Gyanshala, that I talked about. Bandhan is the second. So Bandhan was then an NGO set up by a gentleman called Chandrasekhar Ghosh. I'm now on the board. It's now publicly listed because it's become a bank. It's become very big. It has 20 million women customers. 20 million, larger than most countries. There's 20 million women customers who are on the bottom of the pyramid, who basically take loans of starts with 10-15,000 rupees, goes all the way up to 1 lakh, and they generate livelihood for themselves, for their family. In fact, I've met some of them, and it's amazing what it does to the society structure. So you think in a rural area, there's one man, probably a farmer, his wife, a couple of kids, maybe more. The person probably earns 5,000-7,000 rupees per month. Now, if this woman starts working in a small little micro enterprise, as we call it, and starts earning 5,000 extra rupees for the family, guess where that money goes to? That money goes straight to the kids' health and the kids' education. And that is an unbelievable uplift to society. And Bandhan has done it 20 million times, right? So I happened to, come across Mr. Ghosh, got involved. I helped him in various organization building efforts, mainly from my areas of expertise, because it is a lending organization. So risk management, balance sheet, how to generate debt on the balance sheet to lend consistently to this other side. And then it became a bank. We went to RBI for approval. RBI approved it very surprisingly. And it has grown phenomenally from there on as well. And then Parivar is a wonderful organization. It's based in, it's an IIT Kharagpur alumni. I'm Calcutta alumni who basically gave up his career and set up an organization. And his Parivar, his family, as he calls it, now has probably more than 3,000 kids. So essentially, he takes kids who are orphans or on the verge of starvation. And there are a lot of these kids in the Jharkhand, Bengal, Bihar border, and he adopts them as his parivar, and they grow up like any other child. I've been to his campus; it's phenomenal. You know, he's a father of essentially 3,000 children. He's single, and some of those kids now, this organization has been there from 2004 onwards. So some of them have now graduated, started working, and entered society. And I've seen the input of these kids when they come in. They are from they're basically from starvation districts, and he's now like created an unbelievable organization. He did that for almost 15 years, and now he started, you know, expanding in Madhya Pradesh, where he creates these units of seva kutirs. Each seva kutir caters to 100 children. Each of them get food, nutrition, education, and then they go back home. So it's an amazing organization. So I started off basically between 06 and 09 in funding these three organizations, and these organizations, you know, have obviously grown phenomenally well. They're all run by phenomenal people, and I'm very happy to be a very small part of their journey. This is an example of what happened in Taki. The kind of film kind of alluded to it. So Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, the gentleman in the striped sweater, is the founder of Bandhan, which is now India's largest and probably the world's largest microfinance bank. He came from very modest backgrounds, and so he had this microfinance lending organization, but he also had an NGO that took care of what he called the ultra poor segment. So essentially, the ultra poor segment are people who are on the fringe of destitution. People become beggars. Women join prostitution simply because they can't survive anymore. So his objective was to eradicate this. So I ran a project with him, and I said, Taki, which is the town where my mother comes from, if you can eradicate this proportion of society completely and make them graduate from being ultra poor to poor, that would be a huge benefit to society. So this is the first initiation of the first asset distribution. So each such woman who has been identified as ultra poor is given an asset. The asset could be a couple of goats. It could be, you know, an ice cream trolley. It could be, you know what tele bhaja is? There's this Began bhajas, fries or fritters of Bengan. So you give them a pot pan and a gas cylinder, and they can start selling it, and they become micro enterprises, and they go away from the fringe into mainstream. They're poor, but they still have a respectable life. So they did that for the entire town of Taki. And then, as I said, now I'm a board member of this listed company called Bandhan. Again, I'm not directly helping each individual, but I'm helping from a C to B model, a business that caters to it. So my time, and I attend maybe one board meeting every 6 weeks or so, helps the organization, helps deliver the goods to the bottom of the pyramid. So, so I did that, like I said, 06 to 09, I identified these three. And then as I studied more, I realized as China was going ahead, and the US obviously is a very wealthy economy, how India can catch up to China. And even today, we are constantly losing brain away from India into other rich economies. And the economy becomes rich through its intellectual property. So how does one retain intellectual properties? Through the university systems. There's no better university, in my opinion, than IIT Kanpur, right? So why not start, you know, doing that? And how does one attract intellectual power, intellectual property, and brain power back to the country? You need to give them some prestige, and that's where I started, you know, doing stuff for IIT Kanpur, and then I was also a founder of another university called Ashoka University. So I'm going to play the another video of, you know, my thoughts about the brain that has been drained out of India needs to come back and reinvest in India. And the only way that will happen, the only way India can compete with the Chinas and the US of the world is to get brain power back, intellectual power back, and it all costs money, and the money has to come from us. So let's say we think an IIT education is similar to a wealthy person studying in MIT, and the cost of that degree in MIT is probably $250,000, which we essentially got for free. So these numbers are today's numbers. My two kids study in Columbia University, so the numbers are real, and that's a big difference of how much, let's say, US system costs versus now. So some of us have used that $250,000 of investment into ourselves and made a lot of money on it. Unless we give that money back, at least to IIT or our country in some way, shape, or form, we have stolen from it. So coming back, this can happen through a stronger university system. And that's when I started creating chairs and other things for IIT Kanpur. The first one I created was in memory of my grandfather, who I've never met, as in he passed away well before I was born. So I said, like, there's no real need for a name, that it's just what it stands for. It's now, been given for many years. The last email I got from Giant's office was the last chair has been awarded to the chemical engineering department. There's no competition here. I'm from computer science, but it doesn't matter. It goes to whatever the university decides it should go to. Very recently, my wife and I created a young faculty research fellowship, again with the same logic: attract young people to come back to India or make sure they stay in India. So, so that's the other one. More recently, I've been one of the founders of Ashoka University, which is trying to build a world-class liberal arts education system in India. The founder, Ashish Dhawan, is from Yale, and he thought India does not have a world-class liberal arts education system. So I was one of the founding members of this university. We can do many more things in IIT Kanpur itself. It helped in patent creation, help in talks and presentations, motivate young children, and then talk, aggressively to our organizations to hire from IIT Kanpur. As I said, I have two more. The more recent one I had from campus. It's not easy. You need to go through the hoops of the immigration processes in different countries. As you know, it's easier said than done, but one needs to put in that effort to help IIT Kanpur, because it helps society at large. I've given examples of few organizations that I am currently helping. Parivar I talked about. It helps create a parivar of 3,000 kids. Samaritan Help Mission, very interesting. The founder, Mamun Akhtar, is a 7th class dropout guy in the most notorious areas of Uttarpada and Howrah. It's full of criminals. So he had his calling when he realized that when India-Pakistan match happens, everybody in his area kind of supports Pakistan, and he said this can't be good for society, right? So he essentially went about transforming that area from a crime-infested area to a really nice area by putting up a school, and the kids of those criminals essentially attended, and they in turn went and reformed their parents, closed down, daru ke bhattis and illegal operations, and it's done from the ground up. Third one is Akhand Jyoti. Mrityunjay Tiwari is an ex-Mohan Bagan football player who decided to set up an eye hospital in Mastichak in Bihar, but almost all the nurses and the operators are women and girls from the village area. It now does 6 lakh operations, eye operations a year. And almost all the nurses are women who play football and operate on eyes. So he uses football and sports as a way of women empowerment and getting them jobs. Future Hope, I met Tim Grandage, he's a British guy from Calcutta. He used to work in HSBC in Kolkata. And he set up Future Hope in Kolkata when 3 guys who were cleaning his cars when he was posted in HSBC Kolkata, and he realized these kids are street kids, and he got them home. And imagine a British banker employed in Calcutta in the 80s, convincing his wife, saying these kids should be a part of our family. And from there, Future Hope now has 250 kids. They all, he uses again sports and education as a way for them to, enter society. It's now been there since the 1980s. So many kids have gone into the police service, and some of them have played hockey for India. He's a rugby player, so many of them play rugby. A more recent find of mine is called Olympic Gold Quest. It was set up by Geet Sethi and Prakash Padukone. It has helped I just love the motto of this organization. It says it requires 6 grams of gold to lift the weight of an entire nation. So my first question to the CEO of this organization was, me helping Mary Com or PV Sindhu, and these are 2 who have come out of this program. How does it help? It helps only one person. So the guy says, no. PV Sindhu, before PV Sindhu became a silver medalist in the Olympics, there were 10 courts where women played badminton in Hyderabad. Now there are 600 courts. So role models of Olympians have a massive influence on society. Same with Mary Com in the East and Northeast, what she has done after her bronze medal. Just one bronze medal can immensely influence lakhs and lakhs of kids. And then of course, 14 Trees by Praveen, my good friend. I think that'll be a phenomenal organization. And I know you guys are already in the process of, donating to him. So anyway, those are the kind of things I've kept myself busy with. I'm happy to take questions or stop here.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for a very nice and inspirational presentation. So anybody that has questions, please go ahead, questions, comments.
I'll give a comment. This is Atam Rao. It's quite amazing what you've done, and quite thoughtful and interesting. So congratulations for what you've done. But, I'm a Trump supporter. Everything should come from the top down. You sound like a communist socialist from Bengal.
I run a 1.7 billion hedge fund. I cannot be a communist socialist.
Oh, no.
Bomb dropped a bomb. Bomb dropped a bomb.
I would ignore what I said at the end.
No, he's not. He's a fierce Trump advocate. Yes, I heard that talk, Ronnie, and mighty impressive. I mean, because I am back in the fatherland, not in the US, but still it was very, very interesting, especially the links with Bandhan Bank and Gyanshala. Gyanshala is something close to my heart. Anyway, for whatever it's worth, thank you very much.
Yeah, can you make the presentation available through Ish?
Yeah, I can. We will put the whole event for. Oh, I forgot to tell everybody. I guess I have to say it now. We are recording the event, and it's going to be up on YouTube.
Thank you. I'll email the presentation. Ish, I've made a small few tweaks in the last one day, especially the last chart with the links to all the NGOs that I support. So you're welcome to go through the website, and I'll email to the group the latest presentation.
Ronnie, I have a question.
Sure,
I am Shurajit Sen. I have a question. I run 2 NGOs, one in Pune and one in Uttarakhand near Nainital. So for the Uttarakhand one, which is basically educating hill children, especially girls, some kind of consulting for scaling up I need. So will you be able to help in that?
Sure, I'm happy to have a chat separately on it.
Yes, that's what I was hoping for. Fine, thanks.
Sure. I can also put you in touch with a few other NGOs who've tried to scale up in that, and they could also give you your thoughts. But I'm willing to kind of spend some time listening to you and then try and find out the right person who can help.
Right. Thank you very much.
Ronnie, this is Uday Mahagaukar. I like 2 of your points very much. One was you should have faith in the organization that you are contributing to. Let them figure out what's best. Let IIT Kanpur, if you give money to IIT Kanpur, they know best. Jayant Singh and his colleagues know best where the money should go. And I think I like that. We sometimes end up spending too much energy in figuring out where it should go within IIT. We should let IIT decide. And I think they are in the best position to do so. And also your point about we are all wired differently. A lot of us would like to help, but we are not capable of going into the slums of Calcutta. But at the same time, we can provide help, and of course, through the medium of money. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind. I like those points.
Thank you.
Ronnie, and first of all, Ish and everyone, thank you for letting me sit in on this conversation tonight. And Ronnie, so many great ideas of what you've built. And I was actually going to ask the question of what Sunita, you just affirmed, how do you talk with folks about building trust with the NGOs you're investing in? Because that's a real issue for us, I think, in the US in philanthropy, that we want to give and we want to be generous, but we want to also control those charitable dollars. And there sometimes is a lack of trust, particularly when the organizations are like really embedded in the community and not like the more institutionalized nonprofits. So can you speak a little bit about how in the work that you're doing, what are the key things that you're doing to kind of build that trust and exhibit why folks should take their hands off the steering wheel?
Well, I mean, I think 2 or 3 ways. Number one, obviously, you meet the social entrepreneur, you feel their passion, right? And we shouldn't be fooled by the fact that they're waiting for our dollars to come in. They are such driven people, irrespective of whether we give our money or not, they will succeed, right? There's no question in my mind. And you'll get that sense when you meet them. So that's one. So that's from their perspective. But more importantly, from our perspective in terms of giving, my philosophy has been, you think you're helping thousands, maybe it doesn't help thousands. But if you can change one person's life, that's a win. So if you can convince yourself that's good enough, then there's no need to debate, right? Once the money is gone out of my hands, I shouldn't have to worry about it. I should think of where else to give, right? And similarly, I'm in the investment business. When investors put money in my fund, they're trusting me, right? So similarly, when I'm putting money in their charities, I should trust them.
Ronnie, I have a question for you. I thought the Indian government is discouraging overseas donations for charities. Is that a problem, or is it getting worse?
I'll find a way. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think there are many charities that have been linked to, terrorist activities or others. But well-run
No,
charities
not
have no
terrorist
issue.
activities like Amnesty International or Greenpeace and all those.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know much about them, but as I said, I normally don't give to UNICEF or such large organizations that are bureaucratic. I look at, the individual-driven social entrepreneurs. So similarly, I mean, this time I gave a little bit to the Prime Minister Cares Fund, but typically I'm not the kind of person who gives money to these kind of umbrellas.
No. That's not the question. The question is, if we give money to, say, Bandhan or Parivar or those, does that become a problem for them?
No.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It doesn't. So it's essentially what the government is focusing on is institutional money, which is coming from outside India to the not-for-profit sector. That is something that they're more concerned with, not so much with if individuals are giving them money.
Actually, I think it is, quite frankly, it's very difficult in many ways. I mean, there's a regulation called FCRA, as you might know. And and many institutions, suffer or cannot get around the FCRA regulations. And the problem is that you don't quite know where you need to go in the government, machinery to kind of get it done. But quite a few, and I don't know. I mean, if Parivar doesn't have an FCRA license, if Adam wants to give money to Parivar,
It does. So yeah.
Okay.
So the well-run organizations, you'll see they are well run, right? So they've taken care of every aspect. They also have a tie-up with the US charity where you could contribute and get employer matching programs. So many of these things have been taken care of. Some of these. Bandhan, of course, now is a for-profit bank, right? So they don't really need money. I mean, and it's a very profitable bank, so they do CSR to Bandhan Foundation, and that does downstream charity work. But the Bandhan experience was interesting, where you can make money and you can do good.
It is a Deepak Raj, Rani, and it's great to see what you're doing. I'm involved in philanthropy quite a bit as well. And one of our frustrations, I'm the chair of Pratham, which is a, a large educational, And, that why don't Indians give more, right? I mean, so I think we need people like you to tell your story, much more broadly, much more widely. And, you always point to, well, we have Azim Premji, and, some will give a lot of money. But we still don't have a culture of giving, unfortunately, in India. So I hope that changes, over time.
Yeah, it's changing. I think it's definitely changing.
Yeah. So Ronnie, this is Jayant here. Just before signing off, really inspiring. And I just wanted to tell that Devraj, I don't know if he remembers me. We met, and Dev has been one of the great contributors in giving back from his batch, and he's also, kind of inspirational if you know his story. And I would like to request Ish to kind of, also arrange a talk on his behalf, so that he can also provide his journey, which is also quite inspiring. You will also like to hear him at some point of time.
Well, I'll always remember our breakfast meeting, at Princeton Club. So
indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Ish. Thank you, everyone. It's really
Thank you.
great.
Take care. Thanks, man.
Ronnie, I think one question comes up. What sort of due diligence do you do? How do you do a due diligence on an NGO? I mean, is there some, like here we have a rating system. I don't know what it is called, but I use it, very much.
Charity Navigator.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
how do you
so
do that if you were looking to help one of, some of these passionate social entrepreneurs, what sort of due diligence tools are available?
So there are many ways to do it. So I had hired, essentially I had hired a consultant. I paid them like a 5 lakh fee for a year to identify 3 world-class NGOs in India that do work in children's education, employment generation, children's education and employment generation. Those are 2, mandates I gave, and they came up with those 3 names: Gyanshala and Bandhan and Parivar. I got to know from word of mouth, but the name also came through that organization. So essentially, I don't give it to startups. I normally give it to established organizations who are at initial stages, and I meet the entrepreneur. I go on the ground. I meet the slum children they're helping. I meet the women who've started businesses in villages. So it is, but that's because I'm from Calcutta. I go around there, and sometimes it's, and the other thing, of course, you have to trust others who've done it, who have said that they're very good, right? So, so Basics is an organization that I used as the consultant who found these 3 organizations for me. But the other thing is some of the smaller ones are listed in Give India. Give India is Give India was started by a friend of mine, Venkat Krishnan, who in campus his motto and aim in life is to make every Indian give. So he created GiveIndia.org. So they have a due diligence process. So if the organization is listed in Give India, it's probably gone through the due diligence of an organization that specializes in due diligence. But again, I think the other easier way is to believe in friends who have done it.
Yeah. Now, these NGOs that you talked about, Ronnie, any possibility we might be able to have them come and maybe give a 15-20-minute presentation at one of our meets about their own organization?
Sure. I mean, if you can, I've given 5 or 6 names. If you can shortlist 1 or 2, I can ask the founders.
Maybe you and I can communicate offline to see which ones would be, proper ones, and just kind of give us a little talk about their NGO, their story, how they began, what they did, and
right. Sure.
Hi, this is Ashok Saxena. I have a question for you. I want to pick your brain a little bit. Let's say that I set aside X amount of money every year to give. There are obviously 25, 30 charities that are competing for the money. Should I take the tact of giving large or all the money to 1 or 2 charities, or to distribute the money among 20, 25 charities that I cannot sort out which one is more deserving than the other? They all seem to be doing good things. So how do you go about?
It's a very tough thing.
It is a tough. I'm known for asking tough questions.
So essentially, give X to 1, X by 2 to 2, or X by 30 to all 30.
So where is the most bang for the buck?
So what has happened for me is that X has gone to 3 or 4X, and so
that I see that it will creep the amount.
So sometimes giving too small a money and expect them to come back and give you feedback is not meaningful. So I try to make it reasonably meaningful for them. So I look at units of people it can help. Like Vinayak Lohani of Parivar is setting up 100 tribal kids camp in Madhya Pradesh. For a year, it cost 12.5 lakhs. So I said, yeah, okay, here's 12.5 lakhs for the first one. And then he comes back to me and says, done, what next? So it's okay, 12.5 lakhs. So similarly, for IIT Kanpur, a charity professor's chair costs like 1.25 crores. A young faculty fellowship costs 50 lakhs. So units of that. doing 1/10 of that is not meaningful, because then that charity needs to find the other 9/10, right? So I try and find units of this thing. So for Bandhan's ultra poor program, Taki municipality had 175 families on the brink of starvation, and it cost 20 lakhs over a 2-year period to bring them over from ultra poor to poor, right? So I said, okay, so here's 20 lakhs. So that's how I look at it, rather than, so I'm trying to solve a problem which is easy for the NGO to implement.
Absolutely.
Good.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. If there are no more questions, if Lori is still here, maybe she can say a little bit about her talk next month.
Yeah, I've been taking notes from Ronnie's presentation all night, and actually I was in the middle of emailing you, Ish, because I'm really intrigued by, we focus so on our community, which is so local and regionally focused, but Ronnie, clearly you have such a much more international kind of worldview for your philanthropy, which is different. I'm taking lots of notes about, the due diligence and the mechanics, as well as the ideas behind why you would give. And I think your philosophy around just, too much is given, much should be expected, and recognizing that we can be successful in our lives, in our careers, but realizing that there is much that we can gain from helping others in our communities also have success and wealth and ways, opportunities for success. So as a career nonprofit person, I really applaud you, and I'm admiring you for being an astute businessman and entrepreneur, and yet realizing that there is a way to be to create success across all levels of your community. So I really appreciated a lot of your comments, and Ish, I would just say, if there's anything that comes out of this conversation that you feel like I can add value to when we speak in March, just let me know. And I'm really appreciative of you all letting me join.
Thank you, Lori. That's very, very kind of you to say what you said. I'm in awe of people who do it as a career as well, right? So I think you guys are doing all the heavy lifting for society. My bit is the easy bit.
All right, great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good night, and we will see you next month. It happens to be again on the 10th. It's always the second Wednesday at 9:30. So we will see you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.